Well, Dan, it's not Friday. It's Tuesday. Kind of wish it was Friday, but welcome into the best damn pond to land. Dan Divjak, Chad Stryker. Dan, what's up, man? How are things after you've returned from tropical, I don't even know where you were, Florida, somewhere in Florida?
We were down on the Emerald Coast, which
Emerald
is also
Coast, yes.
known as 30A, the Panhandle north part of the Gulf Coast in Florida. It's
Yeah.
a different world. It's heaven. It's gorgeous. You know, take takes about 24 to 48 hours to try to get back into the groove. I wish I was there still.
Yeah. Well, I almost said Emerald Isle, but I was like, that doesn't sound right. So
Emerald Coast.
Emerald Coast. All right,
Yeah.
cool. Well, if you guys wouldn't mind, hit smash the subscribe button, smash the like button. We appreciate all of you guys in the comments sections have been off the hook and wild lately. I think Dan and I kind of were texting back and forth about the amount of comments you guys are leaving, so we appreciate that because I saw on our analytics that like a lot of people are finding us through the up next video, which tells me that the comments are pushing us for people that are interested in Ohio State football. So if you are interested in Ohio State football and you don't have anything going on Friday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, we have, I kind of talked about, I pushed this out last week, Dan, and then I don't know, we kind of sort of pushed this onto Twitter, but for those of you who don't know, that's right.
I'm proud of you, man. You got the music inlay and everything.
Yeah, how about that? That's why I get to play producer, Dan. That's why I get to play producer. Yeah, so we're mashing it up with Juck on Bucks live. So I'm going to produce that one. I mentioned it in my Twitter post. Dan and Juck will probably answer a lot of the questions. I'll chime in if I can, but you can leave comments and everything, and I'll be watching the comments and posting them up just like they do on Bucknuts and everywhere else. And so this is our first crack at it on the best damn pod in the land. Going live, so we're gonna have some fun with that, and I'm sure Dan will have some Spitfire takes too.
It'll be fun. I'm sure Juck and I will feed off of each other quite well.
I love to watch you guys. It's hilarious.
Well, Friday is the McNutt announcement. I don't know if we're going to be doing it live. I don't know what time he's announcing, but
I have to look. I'll look.
Juck made reference to me the other day without completely throwing me under the bus that I had a gut feeling that we could all be surprised. We got an election coming up. Instead of the October surprise, it could be the July surprise. But I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, I was gonna say I struggle with that one. I don't know.
I told him, I said, listen, man, I said, if I predict that we're going to get surprised, then I'm the smartest guy in the room, and if we don't, then I just go back to being a knucklehead.
And you can say you can predict a surprise and it not happen. So like it's. I mean, my goodness, you could switch your crystal ball 30 seconds before his announcement and you'd still be right if you're Steve Wiltfong. So,
yeah, no, I fully expect him to pick Oregon on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where I don't even want to call it smart money with McNutt because I don't know if people truly know. I mean, him announcing that the fact that he's even announcing right now kind of came out of the blue. So, he said despite, regardless of who he commits to on Friday, he's still going to take an official visit to Ohio State. So what's that all about? I don't know.
Yeah, I remember, and you know this too, like Saban, once you committed, Saban, Dabo, a couple of the other guys, like once you commit, like they were really adamant that you not take visits. And Ohio State lets their players do it. And I know several other schools do as well. So it is what it is. It's the era that we're in. And I think I have to remind myself that, you and I are a little bit older and we remember the old ways. And like, once you were committed, and, and now we're a couple generations removed from that. I'm a nothing. Like I'm not a Gen X and I'm not a millennial. Like I'm in the middle, and I think people call me the Oregon Trail generation. I guess I don't know, or Zennials, because I see both
I'm gonna have
sides
to
of it.
open up
But
my history book to
yeah,
understand that reference.
yeah. Well, the
Um,
Oregon Trail was a computer game that we played in high school because
oh,
I'm old enough that I was raised like playing outside. This is way off the topic. I'll cut this out. And young enough to know like that we didn't have computers in our home, but we did in school.
yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's I had a thought there and it escaped me, but yeah, I don't, you know, well, oh, I know what I was going to say. Sorry, don't cut any of this out. We're human. It's part
Yeah.
of our, it's
Part of our shtick.
part of our flavor. There was a time in the Big Ten where, there was a gentleman's agreement. I mean, think about this for a second. There is a gentleman's agreement that as soon as a kid committed somewhere, the other teams would stop recruiting him. And when Urban came up from the SEC, he said, "Screw that. That's
Yep.
nonsense. Like it's You eat what you kill, and hunting season goes till signing day.
Yep.
So now it's that was the SEC mentality, and it's wild wild west now, man.
It certainly is. So I grabbed this earlier in the week, and I'm going to share this. And Dan, I I don't know if I can. I'll have to try to blow this up. I see that it's very small. But it was Gopher Crew on, and he posted that um basically the I don't even want to how you want to say it, like his version of what he thinks um
QB
the
power rankings.
quarterback power rankings in the Big Ten should be. Yeah, I don't. This is not. I'm just gonna have to read them, unless it's gonna resize for me.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, you're okay. I'll read them
Yeah,
out.
why don't you go ahead and read them?
Yeah. So he posted and talked about how he thought that here we go. He has Dylan Gabriel at
So these just
one.
to just to clarify, these are his Big Ten QB power rankings.
Correct. Big
Gotcha.
Ten QB power rankings. Dylan Gabriel, Drew Aller, and then just gets worse from there. Aiden Childs, Will Rogers. Um, yeah. So then Mike or
Miller
Miller
Moss.
Moss, excuse me, Ethan. I can't even hardly read these; they're so small. And yeah, so it's a train wreck, man.
I
I'm
mean,
gonna grab them off my phone.
I
So
mean, Drew Aller was horrible in his biggest games last year. I know he's an Ohio kid and
yeah,
we root for him and all, but I mean, man, he looked horrible against Penn State or against Ohio State and Michigan. And they didn't have like a pass completed over 30 yards for
yeah,
2/3 of the season.
yeah. So it goes Miller Moss at 5, Ethan uh, Gerbers at 6, Max
I need to put these
Braumer at
guys up.
7, Hudson Card at 8, Dylan Raiola at 9. True freshman. Okay. 10 is Will Howard. 11, McNamara. 12, Van Dyke. 13, Orgy. Which, okay, like he should be 18, but cool because he can't throw the forward pass. Curtis Rourke, Luke Altmaier, Ethan Kalakmanis, Billy Edwards Jr., and then Mike Wright. So I don't know where he came up with these, but it's certainly funny.
I mean, he's got Aiden Childs ranked third, and I don't even know if he took a snap last year as a freshman at Oregon State before he transferred to Michigan State. I mean,
Yeah.
uber talented guy.
Oh,
Dylan
yeah.
Raiola up there. I mean, true freshman, never took a
Yeah.
snap. This defies all logic.
Well,
Miller Moss played in one game.
yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of Drew Aller as an Ohio kid, but if you watched him, did you watch him last year, bro? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
not you, but like this dude, like Gopher Crew, like, um, none of this really makes any sense. Like, I could understand it having Dylan Gabriel, who's came from Oklahoma, played some football. I mean, he's 5'2", but
I mean, let's be honest. Dylan Gabriel's put up some very,
yeah,
very
I know. I'm
impressive
not.
numbers. He's,
Yeah,
you know, in his 7th or 8th year of college football.
yeah,
but I mean, that one's not surprising. I think he's currently the new Heisman favorite on a lot of the betting services.
Yeah,
So, but just yeah, I mean, I don't know who this Gopher Crew guy is, but he
I
also
don't either.
he had some running back rankings where he had like Trey at 8 and Junkins at 10 in the Big Ten,
Mm,
not nationally, but in the Big Ten.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was just silly. So there's a lot of silliness out there on the Twitter world.
Yeah, I know. It just like I don't know why. It just I think it bothered me the most for two reasons. One, Oregon and Dylan Gabriel haven't played a snap in the Big Ten yet. So there's that. Like that bugged me. Two, the Drew Aller thing. Like as much as I like Drew Aller and he's a really nice kid, I met him a few years ago. He had come to one of the Ohio State games and like I briefly like got to do the fist bump, and he seemed like a very nice kid. Aiden Childs comes over from Oregon State. Is it Oregon State? Yeah. Um, again, has never played a snap in the Big Ten. Will Rogers, okay, you can keep him Miller Moss 4-5. I'm fine with that. But like, I mean, Hudson Card's a heck of a football player. But then to assume it's just Will Howard when we have a true quarterback competition, and then you rank them at 10 in an era where Ohio State's offense is one of the most powerful offenses that, in football or has been, even with Honda McCord, we still had a great offensive season. It wasn't the CJ Stroud, Justin Fields seasons, but jeepers, man. That's, I don't know. End of rant, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody's an expert.
Yeah. So speaking of everybody's an expert, we had now please continue to comment. I don't mind if you have a differing opinion. But so we had someone comment on our latest show where we talked about the linebackers, and they said that the 2025 class is definitely not the best class. The 2022 class had Hicks, top 10 overall, Sonny Styles, and Gabe Powers, who is ranked 113th in the class. Even without Styles, the 2022 class kills this year's linebacker class. And I said Styles came in as a safety, and I dropped the link, and he said even without Styles, the 22 class is better. And so I just did a dive. Like I just went back and looked. So, Dan, I mean, do you think there's an argument here? I mean, I sent you the notes. I'll talk about it, but
I mean, if you're looking strictly at rankings, right? I mean, CJ was a 5-star composite, 10th in the nation,
yeah,
number 2 overall linebacker. Powers, he was 130, ranked
113th,
113th
yeah,
and number
10th,
10
and
linebacker in the
yeah,
class. And then you look at, you know, I don't know. I mean, if you're strictly looking off of rankings, then yeah, I guess that argument can be made. I definitely wouldn't throw Sonny in there as a linebacker into that. So
no,
if you're
you
looking at
can't.
just
So
I mean,
I'm
Patty John's ranked a little bit lower than Hicks, but Alford is ranked significantly higher than Powers. You know,
and then
you
you
got
have Eli
CJ, you
Lee.
got Eli added to our class. That doesn't help the argument off of composite rankings. I mean, it's hard not to look at what they've done, though. I
Yeah,
mean, Gabe, neither one of. I mean, CJ's barely got on the field, and Gabe's been on the field less. I'll be shocked if that's the case with Petty John and Alford.
right. Yeah.
So I think the jury's out on it.
Yeah, so I will, and you and I talked about this at the spring game, and Gabe Powers looks completely different than when he came in. He was light when he came in, and I've already called my shot. He's going to be the starting middle linebacker next year. He will be the Mike after Cody Simon moves on. Like it's Gabe Powers' show to lose. It's his spot to lose next year. He'll be going into his 4th year, and like it'll be like it's his spot to lose. Like he looked great in the spring game too, and by all accounts, James Laurinaitis talked about how well he played in the spring. So that the light has come on. That will happen. I'm not like I have no doubt about it. but yeah, I listen. I'm yes, it was a good class, but I'm looking at like what you said, Dan, where and I hate to like be repetitive, but they haven't been on the field at all. Like if they were
Right.
that great,
Yeah.
why are they not playing? And then I don't want to pick on anybody, I want to be careful how I say this, but like when I watched Hicks play, the angles
Oh, he's lost.
left something to be desired. So, you can argue all you want that the about the rankings, but the fact is they haven't put it on the field, and so I think that's really why you and I are so hyped about this class. And then if they could figure out the Larry Johnson thing and they lump Justin Hill into this class, then there's no argument to be made that this is the best linebacking class in recent memory.
Yeah, again, if you're looking strictly off of rankings as to when they came out of high school, I can see where the argument would be made that, CJ and Gabe were a better snag than what we've got right now. It's hard to ignore what they've actually done since they've been here.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I wanted to get your take on something, and like we've been hashing this out like in our messages, and um, it's kind of it's just weird. And it's Will Conroy. And this isn't in our show notes, and I know I'm like kind of springing this
Yeah, no,
on
I'm
you,
ready
but
to talk about it.
yeah, I thought you might want to add it into the show anyways. So, um, I know you were talking to someone that's close to the situation on top of everything else. So, 2026 Ohio kid, really like him a lot. Recently crystal balled to Oregon, weirdly. And that doesn't track with anything that you and I know. So, talk about Will Conroy, and then I have another one for you after that.
Yeah, so this one just struck me as really odd. First of all, when Wilfong came out and crystal balled him to Oregon last week, it just seemed so freaking random.
Mm-hmm.
This kid's he's going into his junior year of high school, right?
Yep.
So to get crystal balled to Oregon, it just seemed like clickbait to me, and I'm convinced that's all that it was.
Okay.
However, here we are a week later, and this kid's dropping a top 5 that doesn't even have Ohio State in it. And when he got his offer in January, he talked about how it's been his dream school and how much the offer meant to him and this and that. And then he's got schools like Arizona State in his top 5.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Doesn't even have I don't even think he had Oregon in there. And he had a crystal. No, Oregon wasn't even in there, despite the crystal ball from last week. So here's the deal. Next year's O-line class in Ohio is loaded.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Stacked.
I know for I can't say I know for a fact because that would contradict what I just said about recruiting being unpredictable, but I feel really, really, really good that we're going to have Greer and Riley, out of Avon and Hoban, I think.
Yeah, Akron
Those
Hoban.
guys. Yeah. I'm pretty sure we're going to have both those guys.
I agree with you.
Champ Smith out of Florida, which I think goes to the same school as Alford, or was it Jeremiah Smith?
Alford.
I feel really good about us getting him. And then I'm starting to hear that the kid out of Maryland, who's like the number 2 ranked overall player, 6'6", 350 offensive tackle, Ohio State feels really, really good about him as well, which was kind of came out of the blue. So, kids, they get in their feelings a little bit. And if they don't feel like they're a priority or if they're not being fast tracked, sometimes they get bad advice. Sometimes they take it personal. I just don't, offensive linemen like that junior year. You look at Jake Cook.
Yeah.
Jake Cook finally earned an offer the summer before his senior season started. And if you look at what he looked like after his sophomore year compared to now, I'm not saying these kids have that same situation. Like, I think they're, a lot more developed and advanced physically than Jake Cook was. at the same time. But there's so much development that can take place over your junior and even your senior year
Yeah.
for you to try to force somebody's hand. I don't get it. It's really, really weird.
Well, I want to be so. Despite what you think about COVID, um, that the impact of that on these kids, especially like the schools that have 8th grade smashed with their high school kids, um, we're starting to see, like, Jake Cook would have been one of those people that, like, he missed some development, like in the weight room and everything else. So like that 2020 class that would have been when they were freshmen is 20 in 2020 or in 8th grade in 2020. Like some of that is impacting some of the development. But now look, if you're looking at 2026, these kids came in 2021 or 2022, and they've had that full length of development. And so like there is an impact there, and I'm not the only one that's talked about that. I can't take credit for that idea and thought either. That came from Mark Porter. Like I agree with the thought, like, because we weren't able to do what we normally do, which is be in a room together and lift together, and and part of the season was gone, and so on and so forth. So you had that impact, and I think we're seeing that, and that's why when people are saying, well, there's so few like elite tackles in last year's class and this year's class, and that's why the price is so high. And yeah, true, okay, but then I think you're going to see that start to shift again, where you're going to have more and more. And the guy you were talking about is Emmanuel Ochino, right?
Yeah, I wasn't going to try to say his name.
Yeah. I was trying to think. I guess it's Ahin Chow. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, I
we'll
don't
just
know.
call him Emmanuel. He's at
All I know is
Georgetown Prep
I
in
got word
Rockville,
that Ohio
Maryland.
State feels really good about him.
Yeah, Georgetown Prep in Maryland. So yeah, Emmanuel. Yeah, 6'7", 340. That's a big dude. Like that's Orlando Pace size as a player, as a junior.
Yeah.
So that's wild. So the other one I was going to ask you about, and there's just been a tiny itty bitty little bit of a spark of a fire all of a sudden for Jarquez Carter. And everybody was saying Miami, 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 and all of a sudden there's this little itty bitty scarlet smoke floating around. What do you think?
Well, Kerlick said this morning that all every team in his top 5 is ready, willing, and able to accept his commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a go, he's a take from all of his top 5. It sure seems like things are leaning in our favor with that.
Yeah, weird, right?
And they're not worried about taking him and it impacting Jakeem Stewart or Malik Autry.
Mm-hmm.
Which reminds me, we need to talk about Malik Autry.
Okay. I should have just let you write the notes.
But all indications is that he's going to select us on Thursday, which would be the 6th guy we've got on the defensive line, and it's like, oh my God, I thought Larry Johnson forgot how to recruit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's funny is the correlation, and we've talked about this, that there are some folks that have said, hey, go out and get what you need on the line. And it seems like we're able to do that on defense. And unfortunately, on the offensive side of the ball, it has not paralleled the same way. So, but yeah, I caught that this morning, that there's this, like, all of a sudden there's just this little like bit of scarlet smoke coming around Jarquez Carter. And I thought, gosh, that's awfully weird. And I wondered if it was, if something had changed in the chase for Malik Autry, but it hasn't, at least from like what we can tell.
Yeah, no. No, I mean, guys like Malik Autry and Jakeem Stewart, they're not going to worry about who else is in the class.
No, they don't.
But speaking of Malik, I mean, if this kid's not flipping to Ohio State, then it is the biggest troll job in the history of troll jobs.
Yeah, that screenshot. Yeah.
I mean, he's like outside the Woody with a boombox on his head, and Peter Gabriel in your eyes is playing. It's at that point.
Mm-hmm.
He posted yesterday of him playing with Ohio State in the new video game. I mean, it's really, really, really interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's a dead period, so I don't know. Like, can he? I mean, I guess is he allowed to contact coaches?
Coaches, yeah, they're allowed to have communication via phone
Okay,
during this dead period.
okay,
Now, I don't know if that. I'm pretty sure that means
FaceTime.
calls and text, but I don't know if FaceTime works or not.
Yeah.
I don't know how that applies. But they're not allowed to have any face-to-face contact on campus, or
Mm-hmm.
whether it be the college or the high school.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just about done. But yeah, no, I
Yeah.
mean, coaches are talking to these kids.
So let's be clear. He's not literally at the Woody. He's not on campus.
No,
Don't,
no, no, no.
don't put that out there. Anybody watching our show that Malik Autry is on campus, because God forbid. I don't want to
Yeah,
get. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want Ross Bjork calling my phone unless it's like a positive thing. So
yeah. It's but I mean, it's really fascinating to watch his interaction.
mm, okay.
And then there was there was an Instagram live the other day with Chris Henry,
That was fun.
Tyler Atkinson,
Mm-hmm.
and Jakeem Stewart wearing an Ohio State shirt and Ohio State bracelet.
Yeah. What were they doing? Like the
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they're talking about how they all want to play together, and the only way that's going to happen is if it's at Ohio State, because Chris Henry's not flipping.
No, Henry's not flipping, and Jakeem Stewart's not going to Auburn. So
No, I mean, I think Jakeem Stewart's down to us, LSU, and USC.
mm-hmm.
And the only one I'm worried about there is LSU.
Yeah. Well,
I can't see a big time defensive player going to USC until they prove something on the field.
Well, not only that, but yeah, I agree. And they have a new defensive coordinator. And then I don't know. I mean, Brian Kelly is a good offensive football coach, but he has some pretty cringe recruiting videos. So who knows?
Yeah, well, every
okay.
coach is getting embarrassed at this point when it comes to
Yeah.
online social media.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that. I like their odds, and all signs point to Jakeem Stewart too being in the class of 2025 and reclassifying. So we'll just have to watch that one. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we'll just have to keep an eye on it. All right. So I had a random one for you, Dan. So the other day I sent this to you, and I can't show it because it's really small, but basically the concept was oh no, wait, excuse me. Yes, what fan base fills their stadium every Saturday, but has like this much relevance in today's college football? And you shot back.
I shot back Nebraska.
Okay. I mean, that's fun. It's fun to go to the games, though. I've been to one. Like, it was really fun. Like, there's nothing else to do.
Talking about Nebraska?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard something interesting about their sellout streak. I've heard that the school buys up all of the unsold tickets in order to keep that streak going.
Well, I have a confession. I paid like $18 a piece for the 2 tickets when we were out there.
Yeah.
So like it was, and they were pretty good seats. They were like 30-yard line, second deck. They weren't, I didn't stay the whole game because I didn't really have a dog in a fight, but it was just something to do because I was stuck in Nebraska. But
yeah,
I mean, the stadium's neat.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, that's a compliment that they're filling up their stadium despite not being relevant for quite a while now. Now, do I think that they're on the up? Absolutely. I'm a huge Matt Rule fan.
Yep.
We've talked about that before. He would be on my short list if the Ohio State job opened. I think they're going to have some growing pains this year with Raiola back there. I think he's going to struggle, but I also think he's going to flash. He's a talented kid. But I've got all the faith in the world that Matt Rule is going to turn that program around.
Okay, cool. That's a good one. So I had 2, but the one, they don't fill their stadium, so I'm going to go with Florida. Like Florida had some relevance under Urban Meyer. They seem to like have a 9-3 year every so often. But that stadium's loud. It's the fan base is hardy. I can't use Miami because they don't fill the stadium anymore. So
yeah,
just ask the recruits that were there. Shots fired. All right. So All right, so I'm going to switch now to. I mentioned Bjork earlier, so there was that little clip. Ross Bjork, he did a great interview. I thought the interview, I thought he presented really well. Like the guy is a fantastic communicator. I mean, I like Gene Smith a lot, but sometimes I could find Gene Smith to be a little off-putting. And Ross Bjork did a great job, and they asked him, and you and I talked about this previously, excuse me, on our show. What did we expect from Bjork starting in July? Like a huge, restructure, rebuild of the Woody. What was it? And so I wanted to ask you, the first thing that came out of his mouth is they're out of space.
Right.
So out of space for what? Like just in general? Like they're landlocked?
Yeah, I mean, for everything. I mean, there's talks of like some of these coaches are working out of closets. They're sharing offices, so when they meet with their position group or players one-on-one, there's other people in there. Like that's not what you see at some of the other top programs. The Woody was built for what the coaching staff looked like at the time.
Yep.
Now that more people are being added to the staff, there's just not enough room.
Yeah.
Juck did a really nice job of, he visited there last Wednesday.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
He gave some feedback that it's small. It
Mhm.
seems to be lacking.
Yes.
It's nice for what they've got, but it's just not at the level of what an Ohio State needs.
Yeah. So I was in the WAC in 2018. So I had to go back and look in my pictures to figure out when I was there. And even then I thought this is really nice. Like it looks nice, it presents well, but like you said, they're out of room. It's small. I don't know how they fix it because they are kind of, I don't want to use the word boxed in, but they don't have a lot more land to work with unless they do something with the parking. So,
well, I think what Laurinaitis told those guys during that 1870 tour is that the new practice fields that they just put in is going to be where some of the new buildings go.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, they spent a boatload of money on those practice fields. Now, it'll be interesting to see if they'll, still incorporate some sort of an indoor with that and build up above that.
Yeah.
But listen, all I know is that whatever they do, it's going to be very high tech, very advanced.
Yeah.
First class.
Yeah. Well, Bjork, I put 4 bullet points. So he put out of space. They need more room for teaching. I assume that means
room and stuff like that.
Yeah. He said this in his opinion, this wasn't about just adding bells and whistles. So I think that they are genuine. I mean, it's going to be top state of the art. It's going to be amazing. And then that he expects to announce something early in 2025. So, Dan, you're Ross Bjork for right now for the next 5 minutes. What are you going to do? What are you going to build? What do you are you going to take tours of what Oregon did, what LSU did, what A&M's done, and take the best of the best of the best?
I would take the best of the best, and then I would improve upon that. I would be forward thinking as far as what's needed from a technology standpoint. I would have some virtual reality rooms in there.
Mm-hmm.
So quarterbacks can get in some reads and be able to work on identifying coverages and fronts and everything else like that. It would just be ultra high tech and very advanced, and it would allow. I think also what's going to be important is it needs to allow for growth.
Yes.
So they need to go from having not enough space to having empty space at first.
Mm-hmm. Unused rooms.
Whatever they do.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was just going to say that actually, they need to be okay. And so one of the things that people forget, even myself, is that this is a state college. So they Ohio, the state, has something to say about facilities, about money, about salaries, even Ryan Days, because they are technically state employees and state facilities. So the state needs to be okay with unused, empty parts of the facility initially to allow room for growth. And as well as I do, Dan, people when they hear about those things, the first thing they think is, well, we're just, we're burning cash. Then, we're not using all of our all of our rooms, and so can we lease those out to the lacrosse team or something? You know what I mean? Like just things like
Yeah.
that. And people, even in business, people do that. Like they're like, hey, half my building is unused. I'm going to lease it out to another company. So
Sure. Yeah.
okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Bjork's the guy. I so far I've hadn't been completely impressed by him, and
I mean,
all
he's got his critics out there, but I like him.
yeah. Oh yeah, he definitely has some critics. I think everything will come forward. Well, okay, let me back up about the critics thing. People are critical because of the contract issue that he had with Jimbo, and rightfully so. The re-up was the problem. I think the initial contract, the guy had a winning program. He was a pretty good offensive mind. Crappy head coach.
Yeah, but you also need to understand the context of what happened with that re-up. I
Mm.
mean, it was on the heels of a 9-1 season,
Mm-hmm.
and it was when the LSU job opened up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they either had to pay him or they were going to lose him.
Yep.
That's where the
1000%.
criticism comes in is, okay, should they have been okay with losing him?
Mm.
You know, LSU and A&M kind of developed a little bit of a rivalry in the SEC. They had some pretty epic games.
Yep.
What was that? One game was in the 70s.
Yes. That
Seven
was that
overtime
like
game or
that
something like
quadruple overtime, was it?
It was, I think it was like 6 or 7 overtimes, maybe
Yeah, it
8
was
or
crazy.
9. But it was, and it so it's hard to blame him for that extension considering the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is something he was at where prior to that he was where at Ole Miss,
Yeah.
maybe, and something happened there as well. I don't know, but I've learned to take everything that comes out of Ole Miss with a grain of salt. Just because of who's there, and
Yeah.
we heard nothing but negative stuff about Quinshon Judkins being a locker room problem and all this other stuff, and that's certainly not what we've seen here at Ohio State.
No. Well, I blame Tim McGraw for all of that.
Tim McGraw, from the Blind Side.
Blindside. There you go.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I blame Leanne Tui, but I just decided to say Tim McGraw. So
you leave Sandra Bullock alone.
Okay. Can do. All right. So I'm gonna wrap our show up with this, Dan. You mentioned, like keep your eyes peeled for Trey McNutt. Is there any wide receiver? Because I know that. So I put let me put this out there. I put a Twitter question out there. Just said, hey, what makes you want to watch a show? Like, what interests you in a show? What interests you in a podcast? And recruiting was the number one answer, or information that they don't get from the beat, which we are not part of the beat. We do our own thing. We don't take marching orders from Ohio State or anybody else. So, who are you watching? Like, what do you like? This one could go our way.
I mean, I think the obvious one is Phillip Bell, and I think he's announcing in the end of August.
Yeah, it's later. It's after David Sanders.
Yeah, it's a few days after David Sanders, who's on the 17th or the
17th.
Yep,
man, I got that date literally circled on my calendar on my desk.
Yeah. So I think Phillip Bell is the obvious one. I don't expect Vernell Brown to pick us. Okay. I mean, all indications are that he's going to Florida. There's starting to be a little bit of smoke again regarding Jamie French.
Yes.
That might not necessarily be, a dead deal.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I mean, I'd be fine if we didn't take another receiver.
Okay.
Considering what's ahead of them and what's behind them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I think they would take Phillip Bell. I think he's a take right now.
Yeah,
he's got the green light to commit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I wouldn't put anything past Heartline when it comes to closing on either Brown or or French. I think those guys might want too much money.
Yeah, the Jamie French thing is very interesting because he was crystal balled to us, and then like it faded, and then he talked about some of the NIL stuff, and then it's interesting because now it's definitely percolated back up again I think it's on the heels of the Decorian Moore commitment to Oregon, but I still think French ends up in Texas. So
yeah,
I think the Lamborghini thing is got its foothold, like for what better or worse it does.
yeah.
So okay. Very good. And then the last little thing I have for you. Did you catch Juck's show the other day where he was talking about the fastest players on the team?
Yeah.
Okay. Just curious. Just asking. It's very interesting to me that Jaden Ballard is a full mile per hour faster than the next person on the team.
You know what's more interesting to me is he doesn't know what to do with it.
Oh, I got to get my shots in, man, when I can. I'd said something.
It's all right, man. I'm Teflon when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I'm listen. I love the kids' loyalty to Ohio State. I'm just baffled.
Yeah. Well, Juck said the same thing. Like he actually, I think he might even quoted you as saying, kind of your thing where he's happy to be there. But yeah, yeah. Okay.
I just don't want to see him returning punts.
He's Jamison Williams. I keep telling you guys this. He's
not
Jamison Williams. Jamison Williams was fast, and they just said, go fast down the field and run. And that's what he did.
Dude, he's not even close to Jamison Williams.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for our show today before Dan and I get into a brawl about Jaden Ballard. But you guys have a good week. Don't forget Friday live, Juck on Bucks. Us, Dan and Juck will be hashing it up. I'll be taking your comments and throwing them up on the screen. I hope you guys can join us.
Do we have a time or what's
11 a.m. Same as always, man.
11 a.m. Eastern?
Yeah, 11 a.m. Eastern this Friday. So I'll be squeezing this in on a lunch hour, which will be fun, but we'll do it and have a good time doing it. So I think it'll be 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central. What is that? 8 a.m. Pacific time. So if you join us and you're up early, that's fun. And if you're one of our friends in Australia that's been watching us, thank you for that, by the way. I can see, like on our analytics, we have people in Australia that watch us, which is really funny.
Wow.
And so it'd be like,
hey, speaking of Australia, the tribe just took their first overall pick, was born and raised in Australia.
Yes, absolutely. Second baseman, right?
Second baseman, yeah. Got a little bit of a swagger to him, a little bit of Jose Ramirez type vibe to him.
Yeah, I love Jose, man. Can't beat it. I hope the ownership does right by this team because, man, like they need some pitching to make a push for the playoffs because this team has been fun thus far in the season. So, all right, guys, we'll see you on Friday live. You guys have a good week. Stay safe, and as always,
go Bucks.
Go Bucks.